So baby Emmanuel, this was a hell of a story, wasn't it? If you like, it just unbelievable. Now let me just find. Oh, I've lost the video. So let me just remind you of the story of little baby Emmanuel Haro, who we don't know exactly when he died, unless it comes out when it comes, you know, maybe the police know, I don't know. But right, where do we start with this? So poor little Emmanuel, we didn't know anything about him until suddenly his mum, Rebecca, let's see if I can put a picture of her up. So let me share this, because this is the video we're going to watch. So these are his parents. So baby Emmanuel, his parents, Rebecca and Jake Haro. And there you can see Jake clutching this picture of Emmanuel there. And Emmanuel already looked like he had some problems, because it seems like he'd been exposed to systematic violence from his parents, or certainly from his father. So, but we didn't know anything about it, did we? Until suddenly Rebecca phoned the police and said she'd been attacked by a Mexican man. She'd parked her car outside like a Centro Comercial in America. This case is in Florida, I think, or somewhere around that way. We'll find out in a minute. And she said, a man said, "Hola." She turned round, he punched her in the face, gave her a black eye. And then when she came round, she went unconscious. And when she came round, the baby had disappeared out of the car, been kidnapped. That's what she said. So that's the first we knew about this case. Then, as time goes on, we find out that the piece of shit father, Jake, he has actually abused another of his children and actually left them brain dead. Let me just change this photo. Take Jake's picture. Take Gus's picture of it. I don't know if I've got a picture up there of Emmanuel. So I'll just leave it with no picture. So yeah, turns out he'd abused another child, left them with permanent brain damage, so they're going to have to be looked after for the rest of their lives. He was given a slap on the wrist and released back to have more children and to go and live with those children. The judge who released this man with a very, very, I don't know if he even served any time in prison, but certainly not much. And boom, what happens next? Emmanuel goes missing. And it turns out he was not kidnapped by a Mexican man at all. Jake Haro, the father, he has now actually pled guilty to killing him. But the little boy's body has still not been recovered. Where is the little boy? He's never going to be found. He's never going to be found, I don't think. They won't want him to be found because of his bones probably are all broken and God knows what. And Jake won't want that. So Jake will lead them on lots of, wild goose chases. But he won't want little Emmanuel's body to be found because little Emmanuel's body will tell a story. He's probably got a fractured skull. He's probably got multiple broken bones. And they do show up, don't they? Even when a body's decomposed, the bones still tell a story. So Jake has come clean and said he killed Emmanuel, but not Rebecca. Oh, no, no, no. All she cares about is Jake. She's one of those mothers that cares more about her partner than she cared about her children. You know, she's just as much, you know, maybe she wasn't the one who killed Emmanuel, but she's sort of, you know, she must have known about it because she's the one that came up with the story about him being kidnapped by a Mexican. So, you know, he wasn't kidnapped by a Mexican. So she knew. She knew. And she can't even say that she was scared of Jake because she's away from Jake now. Jake can't hurt her now. And she's still not telling the truth. So basically, at the end of the day, she's just as much piece of shit as he is, isn't she? And she is still pleading not guilty. So that's what we're going to look at now. Now, what surprised me is when I was watching this article, if you like, or this news blurb, he's going to be sentenced on Monday. Monday, as early as that, because he's already pled guilty. They're going to sentence him on Monday. So let me know in comments what you think the sentence is going to be. So he's pled guilty to second-degree murder of a little baby, and he's already attacked and left brain dead another of his children. What sentence is he going to get? He's got to get life without parole. Surely. Surely, surely. Anyway, let's watch this video and see what they've got to say. I'm pretty speechless about this case, really, because, well, it's just so horrible to think parents could do that to their children. But also the fact that he was released before.
California, where the mother of missing baby Emmanuel Haro was back in court. Rebecca Haro is accused of murdering her 7-month-old son and then telling authorities he had been kidnapped. Yeah. Haro's husband, Jake, pled guilty to the murder earlier this month, but Rebecca has not changed her plea. Joining us live in studio now to break it all down is Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson. Thank you, Matt, for being with us. Of course. You've been covering this case. I understand today's hearing was short. Tell us about it.
Very important, Judge Ashley. And the case continued again. Mother of missing baby Emmanuel Haro back in a Southern California courtroom today and asking for her settlement conference to be pushed again, this time to January of next year. Rebecca Haro's last court date was moved after her husband's shocking change of plea right before his settlement conference was set to begin.
Now, she looks like she's lost a little bit of weight, hasn't she? But let's just look at her again there, because they always fascinate me, these people. In the previous court appearances where they appeared together, she just kept looking over at Jake, just like she reminded me of, that horrible couple that's murdered all their children in a fire, Mick Philpott and his wife. Just all she was bothered about was Mick, not bothered about all the children that had just died. And this is how it looked with Rebecca. All she cared about was Jake. And she had a black eye, remember, and it was probably him who gave her that black eye. So, let's just have a look at her.
Pushed again, this time to January of next year. Rebecca Haro's last court date was moved after her husband's shocking change of plea right before his settlement conference was set to begin. Earlier this month, confessed killer Jake Haro pled guilty to murder of 7-month-old baby Emmanuel. Back in August, you remember, both parents were charged with murder, child endangerment, and filing a false police.
I mean, look at this guy. Look at the size of him. He's built like a brick shithouse. In fact, the two of them are, pretty big, aren't they? Tiny little baby. To me, you just think, well, he's got to have a button mushroom, hasn't he? Because does it make him feel like a big man to kill a little baby or to beat a little baby? Maybe he didn't sort of set out to kill him, but he's obviously abused him. How could they? How could he? This great, big, horrible man. And he's big in all senses, isn't he? He's quite tall, he's overweight, he's like, he looked like he was limping, then maybe he's got mobility problems. Probably because he just sits around eating all day. How could he hurt a little baby? What sort of a person have you got to be to take everything out on a tiny baby, and not for the first time? He's a serial baby abuser. It's just he shouldn't have been around children.
Police report. Well, today, Rebecca Haro agreed to move her settlement conference by 85 days. Take a listen.
Ms. Haro, you have the right to have your preliminary hearing heard within 10 court days concluded within 60 calendar days of your arraignment. You waive those rights and agree instead that your preliminary hearing would be timely if held within 10 court days of January 21st. Ma'am, you're ordered back to this department.
So she's going to, January the 21st. Another 3 months.
January 21st for felony settlement conference.
At this point in time, still no indication if Rebecca Haro, the mother of this baby, is looking for a plea deal. But the settlement conference and now the preliminary hearing have been moved to the end of January.
That's a big deal. I know we'll stay tuned and see what happens. But tell us about Jake entering the guilty plea. What's next for him?
He's back in court on Monday. It's going to be another big day, November 3rd, for his sentencing. Now, on Monday, we can expect those victim impact statements and possibly a statement in elocution from this confessed killer, Jake Haro, before his sentencing. Haro faces 25 years.
Look, he looks quite emotional there. They said he was emotional, but I don't think he's crying for baby Emmanuel, is he? He's crying because he knows he's going to prison probably for life. So this little baby was 7 months old. He was reported missing on August the 14th, but it's not clear when he was last really seen. He could have been dead for a long time. God, it's unbelievable that this man was allowed around children. What repercussions is the judge that released him, gave him just a tap on the wrist when he left another baby of his permanently disabled, brain damaged, blind. That's what he did to his daughter. And then the judge gave him a rap on the knuckles, basically. How was he? What's going to happen to that judge? How is that judge going to be reprimanded? That judge has got blood on his hands. I hope he knows that, and I hope little baby Emmanuel haunts him. I really do, because you know what? If you're a judge or you're in a privileged position. These are jobs that people work hard for. I know, probably done years of sort of legal training to become a judge, but you're in a privileged position where what you decide about people's lives matters. Life or death. I've said this before, we've all got our responsibilities in our professional lives. If I make a mistake, I'm a Spanish teacher. If I make a mistake, the worst that can happen is somebody saying the wrong thing out there when they're trying to speak Spanish. You're not talking about people's lives. That judge is just as responsible, in my opinion, as Jake, because Jake did what he did because he was allowed out and free, and not only that, allowed to be around children. So the authorities, they bear a responsibility, and they want those jobs. You don't become a judge like involuntarily. Nobody phones you up and says, right, you're a judge tomorrow. You must apply for it. You must want to be a judge. You wanted to be a judge, gets paid well enough, thriving off other people's misery, but not even making the right decision and protecting victims. Gets me really angry because, he'll just carry on. He might be in court today, later, judging on somebody else's life. He should be held accountable for the decisions that he made.
to life behind bars, but it's up to the judge to determine the sentence since his change of plea was with the court and not the Riverside County District Attorney's Office.
How do you plead to the charge in count 1 of the amended felony complaint of violation of Penal Code Section 187A?
I'm guilty.
And for clarification for the record, that's going to be in the second degree?
Yes.
Sir, do you admit that you committed a violation of Penal Code Section 187, Subdivision A, a felony, in that on or about August 5th of 2025 through and including August 14th of 2025 in the County of Riverside, State of California, you did willfully and unlawfully murder baby Doe, initials EH, a human being?
I admit.
Audio from that recording from that hearing and a photo of him appearing to cry there in court. Baby Emmanuel's remains have never been found.
Where are his remains? You know, this baby's just been, you know what? They think that he's just been thrown out into the rubbish. I mean, that's just as bad as killing him in the first place. Your own baby, just treating them like a tissue or something. You know, just an empty packet of something. You know, just, it just makes you speechless with rage. Where is that baby? Maybe he doesn't even know where he is now, because if he threw him in the rubbish, he'd be on a landfill somewhere. They'll never find him because he's too little. You know, it's hard enough to find an adult body in a landfill, especially if he's not cooperating, you know, because whatever Jake says, as I say, I don't think he's ever going to tell the truth about where Emmanuel is, because then the bones will tell a story. You know, the bones, it's hard to dispose of bones. You know, they will be, if they're recovered, they will tell the story of fractures, breakages. His skull is probably fractured, caved in even, maybe. We don't know so although it's good that he's pled guilty and he's going to be sentenced on Monday, so his case is going to be quick. It's her case that will be slow because she's not said that she's guilty. So he'll be sentenced on Monday and we'll be covering that. Don't worry, I'll be on that. We probably will never find out what really happened, because he won't even have to explain. Do you know, there's part of me, like sometimes I'm glad when people plead guilty and then it saves the family going through a court case and that. But of course, in this case, the family are the perpetrators. His strangers cared more about Emmanuel than these parents did. But then you never really get to the bottom of what happened. You know, I keep saying this about Madeline Soto and Stephen Stearns. You know, he pled no contest, which saved a trial, which is good because it meant that all those horrible videos of Madeline didn't have to be shown. And it, protected her sort of dignity, if you like. But it feels so empty because Stephen Stearns will never have to say what happened. We'll never know. He's not even pleading guilty. He's pleading no contest. And in that way, he's avoided the death penalty. And he's got life in prison without parole, which is good, of course. But he's avoided the death penalty. And he's also avoided having to tell anybody what actually happened. You know, so it does feel like, you know, a Pyrrhic victory, if you know what, an empty victory. It's like, Madeline is deceased and nobody's bringing her back. But I don't know, there's just something, it must feel good or better for the family, you know, to be able to know exactly what happened. I feel like he's got away with not having to explain what happened. And this will be the same with Jake. If he's pleading guilty, he'll get his sentence, but he's Is he never going to have to explain publicly what piece of shit he is? You know, so that's
not located. On Monday, Haro has the opportunity, Judge Ashley, to give that statement in elocution and just say where the baby is. He's admitted to killing that baby.
And a judge cannot force anyone to say anything, including where the baby is, but here's to hoping he does choose that route.
Exactly.
Matt Johnson, thank you so much as always.
Yeah, so no, but do you know what? I personally, I think he should be told. If he doesn't say where Emmanuel is, he gets the death penalty. You know, honestly, that's how strongly I feel about this. Why should he get away with not saying what he did to this baby or where he put this baby's body? So this baby, I mean, listen, in some ways it doesn't matter. The baby is with God, in my opinion, in my beliefs. That baby is with God. I hope he's sleeping safely in the arms of Jesus, you know. But one way or another, in that way, I do think he's with God, with the angels and all those things. But just the thought of him not, you know, just cast out like a piece of rubbish. It's just not fair, is it? It's not fair. So, you know, if I had my way, I mean, literally, I would say to that piece of shit, you don't say where this body is, you get the death penalty. That's it. You know, there's another case, I don't know if you know about it, of Harmony Montgomery. Very sort of similar case, you know, her father killed her. Her own father killed her. He won't say where she is. It's thought that the reason he won't say where she is he carried her around with him for years in a bag and a bloody this, that, anyway. And in the end, he, you know, sorry, it's quite distressing, but he, you know, he sort of kept compressing the body till there was nothing left of it. And then he just threw her on a, you know, threw her in the bin or whatever he ended up doing with her, but there wouldn't have been much left of her to find. Another little one. And he got really angry because something to do, I think she wet herself. She was terrified of him. And, you know, I know somebody who that happened to, that their child was so terrified of their own father when he exploded one day. This little boy just wet himself. So terrified, just wet himself. And that'll be what happened with Harmony Montgomery. She, you know, he'll have exploded about something. She's wet herself because she was living in a permanent state of terror. And he murdered her, battered her to death with his own hands. And then hid her body, and her body's never been found. So do you know what? They shouldn't be allowed to plea deal. If they don't say where the body is, they should automatically get the death penalty, in my opinion. I've always been, I'm very, I'm very skeptical about the death penalty. I don't believe that anyone has the right to take someone's life. You know, I am pro-life, but you know, there's just sometimes you just think, oh my God, you know, it's like if anyone deserves the death penalty is someone like Jake Haro, because also he's done it before. You know, it's not like he did it once and it may, you know, is there any excuse? But you know what? He did it before to one of his children and then he's done it again. So, you know what, that's it, isn't it? But anyway. So poor little Emmanuel, you know, again, so all these three cases actually are mysteries. Well, with Emmanuel, it's not a mystery. His dad's admitted to what he did, Jake has. She hasn't admitted anything, though. The mother, if you could call her a mother, so we've got to wait till January to see what the next step for her is. But we will find out what Jake's sentencing is as quick as Monday. So, and then, yeah, as far as Jack and Lily are concerned, there was, we talked about the statement from their mum, Malaya, on Facebook, how much she misses them, etc. What has happened to Jack and Lily? And the same with Gus. What has happened to Gus? I mean, not that there's been any family statements. In the Gus Lamont case, they've kept very private, haven't they? They haven't really come out with anything. So, yeah, 3 cases that we're looking at, 3 little updates. I'll keep you posted on all of them and any other case, of course, that we're covering. So, I'm going to go and have lunch. Thank you so much for sharing some time with me. And most of all, thank you so much for caring about these children. Well, they're all children, aren't they? You know, children are vulnerable and they deserve protection. Doesn't feel like they get much, does it? You know, and when their own parents don't care about them, like in the Jake and Rebecca Haro, the Emmanuel, baby Emmanuel case, you just think, God, when strangers care about them more than their own parents, you know, that poor little baby never stood a chance, did he? 8 months, short life, was probably abused his whole life, and then came to a violent end by that great big fat piece of SHIT. Oh, dear me, dear me, dear me. Horrible. Just the size of him. He's like a man mountain. And he got, you know, he's murdered a tiny little baby. God, you know what? I hope he's not safe in prison. That's what I hope. Because, you know, prisoners who do bad things to children don't normally do well in prison, do they? And, you know, I hope he gets the... gets that sort of